Hi there, Glenn Ocean here. This video is going to be a little bit weird because in this video we're going to have kite surfing meet with plumbing. Do you know what these are? This is a Teflon tape. Teflon tape used in plumbing on threaded links. Like this one over here. See, this is a Teflon tape and it goes on a thread. The Teflon tape itself is very thin. The thickness of a tape is 0.1 millimeter. In other words, it takes 10 layers of this tape to build up 1 millimeter of thickness. Put differently, it's about 0.25 mils, or put differently, it takes about 100 layers of this tape to build up 1 inch of thickness. So it's really thin and delicate. And there are two reasons why people use it in plumbing on threaded links. Number one is it works as a sealant. So if there's a high pressure on the inside, then the water or the gas, whatever goes in here, doesn't leak through. And the second reason, which is more of a convenience, when it's time to open up those links, you see, because the tape is sitting between two metals, it prevents them from corroding together. It prevents them from caking up. And it makes it really easy to undo these connections when the time comes. Let me put it back in. Now, do not confuse this tape with electrical tape. This is electrical tape. Looks really similar, especially on camera. Same color. Electrical tape has adhesive side on one side, and well, it's much thicker. So this is not what we're using over here. Okay, please don't confuse the two. Now, how do we apply it? Let me use this side, and I'm going to use this tape. So in terms of which side goes first, doesn't matter, because the tape is fully symmetrical, fully reversible. Now when it comes to applying it to the thread, there are two ways. You can put it this way, or you can put it this way. Okay, now this way would be the correct way, and how can you tell is when you finish, I'm gonna put 3 rounds and rip it off with my fingers. When it comes to putting the thread in, you see the tape stays in without flaring, without opening up. So the direction of the turn goes against the tip of the tape, the end of the tape, and it kind of folds it down. Okay, so this is the correct way to go. It's not a big deal if you put it differently, if you put it in the opposite way. In the worst case scenario, it will fall off, it's not going to go through, so you'll have to redo it and apply it again. The amount of tape on this reel is pretty decent given the thickness of the tape, so there is a pretty good amount, and I think they sell them for like $1. As you may know, there is a number of threaded connections when it comes to kitesurfing, especially when it comes to boards, be it a twin-tip board or a foil board. Like with the twin tips, we have a handle attached to the board with the screws, with bolts, and we have foot straps attached to the board as well with the screws. We also have fins, but that's a different story, a little bit later about those. When it comes to foil boards, the screws, the bolts are all over the place. You see the fuselage is connected on one side to the mast with screws, with bolts. Okay, on the other side it's connected to the blade itself, either it's a front or the tail. There are threaded connections all over the place. And when the mast is connected to the board, also there is a bunch of threaded links. And you may know that the screws themselves, they're usually made of a stainless steel, but the counterpart is usually made of aluminum. And when these two are left together for an extended period of time in a seawater with the salt and iodine, they cake up, you know, they bond together, they crystallize, and then it's really difficult to open them up, to undo, especially if you didn't touch the connection for the whole season and you just want to open it up at the end of the summer, at the end of the season. So what are the advantages of using Teflon tape in kitesurfing? Well, there are at least two I can think of. Number one is Teflon tape is serving as a spacer, as a little bit of a spacer in the connection. What do I mean is this. Sometimes a screw can be kind of loose in the thread, like this one over here, okay? And as is, it may not be as secure, okay? You may just, if you keep tightening it up, you may just damage the thread. Now, to prevent this from happening and to make the connection secure, apply a little bit of a tape, a few rounds, and when you put it in, it's not going to be as loose. See, it's tighter. All right. And the second benefit is when it's time to undo the connection at the end of the season, maybe even at the end of the session, the two metals, the stainless steel and the aluminum over here, they're not going to cake up. They're not going to seize. They're not going to corrode together, given the aggressiveness of the seawater, iodine and the salt. So it will be a lot easier to undo the link. Now, piece of advice over here, once we add it, I've seen people use on the threads for the same reason, to preserve the connection, to make it easier to open it up at the end of the season. People use lubes like WD-40 liquids or thick paste like lithium grease. Not my favorite for two reasons. Number one, these are real magnets for sand, for little particles, and they're messy too. You see, they always get grimy. So it's easy to introduce some extra particles into the connection. This can damage the link also. And another thing, especially when it comes to liquid lubes like this, it's going to get washed away. Give it enough time and the seawater will just eat it away, wash it out. So it's not going to stay there for as long as Teflon tape would. Okay, I'm glad you're still watching, because I'm about to tell you a disclaimer. This whole video, the whole story about Teflon tape is only valid for connections metal on metal. When the screw is made of metal, the bolt is made of metal, and the counterpart is made of metal as well. Do not use Teflon tape when it comes to metal and plastic. Here's a good example. Fins. Fins are made of plastic, and yet they're connected to the board with the metal screws. The problem with this is that these two materials, they have different densities, and even though the plastic may appear like solid, but it's not as solid as metal. And if you add a little extra, too much, let's put it this way, if you add too much of a Teflon tape on this thread and you drive it with excessive force, the plastic may crack, it may snap. Okay, I don't want you to break the fins, so do not use Teflon tapes on metal to plastic connections, all right? Okay, I guess that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Get out there, have fun, and be safe. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.